The worst things Nightwing aka Dick Grayson has ever done. Now I would like to preface this video by saying I'm not doing this to show that Nightwing's a bad person. I'm not a Nightwing hater in any regard. I actually love Nightwing and he's one of my favourite characters in the DC. Now a lot of the moments I talk about in this video are retcons, just as a way to have some fun and talk about Nightwing's more questionable storylines. There's a moment in the comics where Nightwing actually murders the Joker. The death of Jason was a catalyst for a whole lot of heroes to consider killing the Joker for revenge. Some would argue that Nightwing is one of the more less violent Robins that there is. He was also perhaps the closest to Jason apart from the Batman himself. When Jason died at the hands of the Joker, Dick was out for blood after the whole affair. So this serves to explain why in Joker Last Laugh, when Grayson thinks that the Joker killed Tim Drake, he finally has enough of the clown and begins a murderous takedown of the Joker, which does result in his death. Now of course it doesn't help that the Joker was saying things like, geez, I hit Jason a lot harder than that, his name was Jason, right? Like, the Joker is just straight up unhinged, and honestly this isn't even necessarily a bad thing that Nightwing does. But this does of course cross the no-kill red line that they have marked for themselves to keep them in control and to make sure that they don't go on killing rampages when why stop at the Joker? Why not kill every villain if we just are gonna give ourselves the right to kill? Now at the last second, Nightwing does try not to kill him because he sees that Tim Drake is very much alive and not dead, but Dick does do so much damage to the Joker that he actually isn't able to survive, and we see Nightwing sort of realizing what he's done. He does kill the Joker. The team does end up resuscitating him, but Nightwing still struggles with the fact that he lost control, he lost to his anger, and technically did kill the Joker. Okay, now here's a moment where Nightwing genuinely does do a very scummy thing. It's very out of character and you could just pass this down to bad writing. It's not very in Dick's character to do this, but he basically cheats on his fiancée Starfire with Barbara, then hands Barbara an invite to his wedding. Yeah, you heard that correctly. The relationship between Dick and Barbara is being one that developed slowly from when the pair began working together. When they were young, it's natural that they would have some ups and downs. This would involve some very sketchy decisions that I guess people learning about themselves and the world are prone to do, such as Dick literally proposing to Barbara. Now after Barbara gets paralyzed by the Joker, Dick makes a reunion with her and they end up sleeping together. Bear in mind, while at this point Dick Grayson is engaged to Starfire, the morning after he hands her a letter to his wedding with Corey. Understandably so, she freaks out and says, "Then what was last night, a little mercy action for the poor crippled girl, you coward? You make me sick. Get out of here." Yeah, I don't really know where the writers were going with this one. I don't really know what they were thinking with this one. I mean, how would Dick not realize that what he was doing would backfire? He thought he would sleep with Barbara, then casually invite her to his wedding and she would just be fine with that. Not to mention that he cheats on Starfire like that. It's crazy. Now, this is a moment where Dick actually knocks out Bruce Wayne over a request. So, Nightwing gets his identity exposed and his supposed death is broadcast worldwide. To put it mildly, Dick's time as Nightwing was over. Seeking to profit from the alleged demise of his former student, Batman asks the very much alive Dick Grayson to go undercover and infiltrate the organization known as Spiral in order to complete the mission and gather intel on an organization who had been gathering intel on the secret identity of superheroes. Dick would need to remain dead. Nobody was informed, not even Alfred, of his continued existence. Now, Nightwing did not take kindly to this request at all, and thus sparks a brutal battle between Batman and Nightwing, where Dick declares he is not Bruce's boy. Dick beats the fudge out of Batman, basically knocks him out clean. Okay, so this next moment is where Nightwing takes Batman's girl for a spin. Bruce and Selina having a complicated relationship is really an understatement. Enemies, allies, friends, lovers, what aren't these two? Now, of course, the Bat family is very aware that Bruce and Selina are essentially a situationship, which is why the following encounter that I'm about to explain is a little weird. Now, when Nightwing tries to stop Catwoman stealing the legendary Klotman diamond, they find themselves pinned down by gunfire of criminals who also want their hands on the diamond. Forced into a very intimate position, their banter turns into flirting, and the flirting leads to a kiss, and then turns into something a little more risky later on. It's revealed that Selina is simply doing this to get back at Bruce and make him jealous, and she trusts that Nightwing will end up confessing all of this and ultimately fulfill her plan. Now Grayson doesn't go all the way, but this is only because he realizes Catwoman's intentions with this, but you know that the thought of going all the way through may have gone through his head, which is pretty messed up, and the fact that he got that intimate with Catwoman knowing that Bruce and her are always on and off, it makes you question his character a little bit. Okay, and finally we have when Dick Grayson becomes the Joker. While Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns is one of the best and most beloved Batman comics of all time, it's truly a masterpiece. I love the fact that it explores, the old man version of Batman, and there's, a new twist on Gotham. There are indeed sequels to The Dark Knight Returns, and they are not very well thought out in my opinion. People aren't even aware they exist. The Dark Knight Strikes Again is the second entry in the series, and in this very, very strange story, Batman and Catgirl, former Robin Carrie Kelly, are off the grid, and in a police state headed by Lex Luthor, left and contemptuous of Batman after being unceremoniously fired for cowardice and incompetence, Dick Grayson commits the ultimate act of betraying by subjecting himself to a series of pseudo-genetic tests and procedures at Lex's hand. When a nightmarish imitation of the long-dead Joker announces himself on the scene, Dick goes and stalks and kills all of the heroes and attempts to murder both Batman and Catgirl. Batman recognizes him as his original boy wonder, Dick Grayson. Now of course, this is just very silly, but an interesting spin, I guess. I mean, you have Dick Grayson, rather than adopting the legacy of Batman, he ends up adopting the legacy of the Joker. Now, again, no one takes the Dark Knight Returns sequels very seriously. Not many people, again, even know that there are sequels. It's clear why they weren't as successful. This is just an absolute butchery of the character. But I guess it's a very interesting retcon spin on him, right, that he adopts the legacy of the Joker, rather than becoming the next Batman. Now, again, as I said, a lot of the things I mentioned in this video are retcons. These are very spin-off sort of storylines, and they are very out of character for Dick Grayson, I feel like. Especially the Barbara one was very weird. The Catwoman one, again, was very weird. And of course, him turning into the Joker makes absolutely no sense. And yeah, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who is your favorite character in the DC? Who's your favorite Robin? Are there any moments that you think Dick Grayson was an absolute jerk and did terrible things that I did not mention in this video? Let me know what you guys think in the comments.